Good? Hey guys, Redbeard here. Anyway, I'm gonna tell you a story. And we're gonna go through a whole gauntlet of emotions here, okay? It's gonna make you laugh. Some of you may cry. It's gonna be okay though. Alright? So I just want you to focus on what's going on here, okay? So I gotta back up a bit because this is before some of y'all were born. Alright? So back in the day, Redbeard used to actually work for a living. And I used to work in the Gulf of Mexico. And I used to drive down from Conway, Arkansas to the Gulf every 2 weeks. I'd work 2 weeks, I was home 2 weeks. Pretty sweet gig until you have a kid and it screws it all up. I'm not saying don't have kids, but I'm just saying it's a pretty sweet deal up until that point. So anyway, I'm cutting down from Conway down to Lafayette, Louisiana. I used to catch a helicopter out of Lafayette. I have thousands of hours of flight time in a helicopter. I have no desire to ever do it again. But anyway, I've done my time. So I'm cutting down, and after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, everybody remember that whole episode? Zeppelin was born shortly after. This was just into the spring of 2006 when all this occurred. So I had a newborn at home, old ladies at home, and I'm headed down to work. And it got to the point where we couldn't find motel rooms. It got really difficult to book a room because of all the people that were displaced, right? So I started driving down the night before, and I would drive through the night and catch a helicopter in the morning. So I'd leave my house at like 9 o'clock at night to catch a 6 a.m. flight out of Lafayette. So anyway, Arkansas is not known for its interstate system, so I had to drive a lot of back roads and whatnot. And so at the time, I was driving a 99 3/4 ton Dodge. It's just a gasser, back of my ute. I didn't know any better. So that's what I was driving, and I was heading down Highway 167. If anybody's ever driven through Arkansas, 167 runs from like Little Rock all the way down to Alexandria, Louisiana. It's kind of a straight shot. So I'm cutting down through there. Everything's going pretty good. I'm on pace to make it. Everything looks like it's cool. And then I'm just outside of Ruston. Has anyone been to Ruston, Louisiana? Anybody in this group? Not surprising. There's not a lot there but pine trees, okay? They call it like the piney woods. I'm cutting down through there on this 2-lane, no shoulder, and a pig runs out in front of me. Like a black, furry, nasty pig. Now, the cool thing about pigs, when you're down in the south, they're a nuisance animal. They're not native. They're an invasive species. No limit, no bag, no nothing. You can smoke all of them you want. It doesn't matter. Well, this one wasn't lucky, and I rolled him with the front of that truck. I rolled him clean off in the ditch. Luckily, the radiator held. The bumper took the brunt of it. I was pretty happy, right? Because, I mean, we were young and married and missing 2 weeks worth of work because I missed a flight. That's kind of a big hill to climb. You know, that's a full month's income. So anyway, I get out and look, and that pig's rolled off in the ditch. He ain't moving. Truck's still running. I got a flight to catch. I keep going. So I fire the truck back up. Amazingly, the bumper held. Like no damage to the AC condenser, nothing. Like everything still worked. And so anyway, we're rolling on. We're headed down, and I make my flight, and I fly offshore. When I get out there, and everything's going good. And I've been out there like 4 days, and this platform I was on was a big platform. It was like 4 platforms connected by these catwalks. So it's probably hard to imagine, but like from one end to the other was like a half mile. And you had to come across, go upstairs, back down. Well, they hollered at me. I was over at the compressors looking at them, and they hollered at me, and they're like, Andy, you got a phone call. And back then, there's no cell service in the Gulf. It's all sat phone or radio communication. It did work through the phone system, but it was through radio. It was really weird. So they're hollering at me the intercom, and I pick up the intercom, and I'm like, hey, I'm all the way on the other side of the platform. Tell them I'll call them back. And dude, they're like, okay. And they call me back. They're like, he says he'll wait. And I'm like, who is calling me in the Gulf of Mexico? Like, how did they find me? Like, you know, like, who is calling me out here? How do you even know how to track me down, right? And so I walk all the way across. Even in February, it's like 80 degrees, 100% humidity. I get all the way over to the main living quarters, right? And I walk in, I pick up the phone, and I'm like, hey, this is Andy. And it's Game Warden Earl Minton, all right? And I'm like, Game Warden Earl Minton, who you with? He's like, Louisiana Fishing Game. And I'm like, okay, so what's up? And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, I got a few questions for you. He's like, are you Andy Tharp, lives at 9 Red Bud Lane, Conway, Arkansas? I'm like, yeah, that's me. You found me in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm pretty sure you know who I am. Okay, this is all pretty weird, you know? And he's like, well, I need to verify a few more things. Do you drive a 99 Dodge 3/4 ton Arkansas Tag XLS 479? And I'm like, I think so. Like, the truck's right. I don't know my tags, right? Like, I don't keep that memorized. But I'm like, yeah, you found me. You got me. What's going on? And he's like, well, on the morning of February 12th, were you driving on Highway 167 just north of Ruston at roughly 3:22 in the morning? I'm like, that's pretty specific to be asking roughly. And he's like, well, just yes or no. And I'm like, yeah, you got me. It's me. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, did you have any trouble on the drive? And I'm like, well, I did hit a pig, but they're nuisance animals. It shouldn't be no big deal. Like, I smoked it, but I still made my flight. He's like, oh, no. It's no problem. You can hit all the pigs you want. You can back up and hit it again. It's no problem. And I'm like, well, then what's going on here? Because I'm really curious, like, at this point, what's going on, right? And so he proceeds to tell me that pig was part of a study for the migratory patterns of these wild hogs. And it was wearing a tracking collar, and I damaged it. And I'm like, how am I responsible for your tracking collar being stuck on a wild pig that runs out into traffic? He said, oh, pigs are dumb animals. And I'm like, yeah, I'm well aware. I got about $1,000 worth of damage to the truck to fix when I get home. And he's like, well, you're not going to like this next part. He said, you owe us $986.42 for that tracking collar. And he's like, you can go to court, but ain't nobody ever won. So he said, the best thing you can do right now is just mail the check or give us this was in 2006. Back in the day, things were different. And he's like, just mail the check, gives me the address, or you can do it over the phone. I'm like, well, I'm not paying you over the phone. Send me an invoice. You already have my address and everything. I don't know what to say, So anyway, he ends up being pretty cordial about the whole thing. We have a little conversation. Everything's cool. Apparently they're trying to see, like, the species spread. They tagged this pig when it was like 6 weeks old. They've kept up with it. It's migrated from North Alabama all the way over to Texas and back. It's kind of interesting, like, hearing the full story, right? Like, getting to hear all about how this pig moves around. But anyway, we get to the end of the conversation, and I'm talking to this guy, and I'm like, look, you got me. I'm guilty, whatever. I don't know how you say you're guilty for hitting a pig, but it's me. But I got to know one thing. Like, nobody was around. Like, nobody even passed me when I was parked looking at the truck. So I'm like, how'd you know? Like, how did you know? You know what happened? Y'all, like, I'm going to tell you what happened. That pig wasn't dead. It turns out he squealed on me.